They say the truth will set you free. But first, it burns. It sears through your heart, your memories, your very sense of self, leaving nothing but ashes where your life once stood. My name is Sarah, a 46-year-old mother who thought she'd built a family on love, trust, and promises, only to watch it collapse under the weight of my husband's lies. When David died, I believed the worst was behind us, that my daughters, Emma and Lily, and I could start to heal. But his parents, Margaret and Henry, had other plans. They unleashed their church friends on us, harassing my daughters in a public market, on Lily's 15th birthday no less. They called us unchristian, heartless, unworthy of God's grace. They didn't know I held the proof of their son's betrayal, their own cruelty, in my hands, and I wasn't afraid to use it. This is the story of how I exposed their lies to their own community, and watched them face the shame they'd had tried to bury us under. I've learned, through years of joy and pain, that life rarely offers easy days. But that Saturday morning, I thought we'd stolen one, a fleeting gift after a year of grief. The air was crisp, tinged with the scent of autumn leaves and wood smoke, as our local weekend market came alive. Vendors called out, their voices mingling with the clink of coins and the rustle of paper bags. Fresh eggs, ripe apples, warm loaves of sourdough stacked high. It was Lily's 15th birthday, a milestone that felt like a small victory. She'd been through so much, yet her spirit still sparkled, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Her party was planned for later in the month, a big celebration with friends and cake. But I wanted today to be hers, a day to feel carefree. I pressed a wad of cash into her hand, her brown eyes widening, her curls bouncing as she grinned, a grin that reminded me of the toddler who already once smeared chocolate on my cheeks. "Go wild, kiddo," I said, my voice soft, teasing. "Chocolate, sweets, whatever your heart desires." Lily laughed, a sound like bells, and darted toward the candy stall, her sneakers kicking up dust. Emma, 17 and all sharp edges, followed with a dramatic eye roll, muttering, "She's gonna buy the whole market." At 17, Emma was my rock, her hazel eyes always scanning for danger, her wit quick, but her heart guarded. She'd become Lily's shadow, especially since their father's death, a protector in a world that kept proving itself unkind. I watched them weave through the crowd, Lily's excitement pulling Emma along, and my chest swelled with a fragile kind of hope. We'd been through hell, betrayal, loss, battles no family should face, but we were still here, together. The past year had been a crucible, forging us in fire. David, my husband of 20 years, died in a car accident, a rain-slicked highway, a sharp curve, a moment that shattered our world. His death wasn't just a loss. It was a detonation, exposing secrets he'd buried deep. Months before he died, Emma and Lily stumbled across the truth. Texts, photos, undeniable proof of his affair with a woman named Rachel. She'd borne him 2 boys, toddlers now, who were left orphaned when Rachel died in a separate tragedy. A car crash, eerily similar to David's, just months later. The betrayal cut my daughters to the bone. They'd worshipped their father, hung on his stories, believed in his love, and he'd broken them, leaving wounds that no apology could heal. I was the breadwinner, the one who kept our family afloat. Bills paid, dinners on the table, school supplies bought, while David spun his double life. We were mid-divorce when he died, the legal battle mired in paperwork, accusations, and my own quiet rage. His parents, Margaret and Henry, 78 and 80, pillars of their conservative church, knew about the affair. They'd enabled him, urged him to keep it hidden, even offered him advice on dodging my suspicions. When the truth spilled out, they didn't offer remorse. They attacked. They filed for custody of Emma and Lily, claiming I was an unfit mother, too worldly to raise them right. They even tried to move into our home, as if they could claim my space, my life, my girls. I fought them in court, my lawyer's voice steady as we built our case, and I vowed they'd never set foot in our house as residents. But I didn't expect their cruelty to sink to new depths, to target my daughters in such a public, vicious way. That morning at the market, I pushed those thoughts aside, determined to give Lily a day of joy. I wandered the stalls, my fingers brushing over cool jars of honey, my nose catching the tang of fresh herbs. I chatted with vendors, Maria, who always slipped an extra egg into my carton, Tom, whose apples were the sweetest in the county. The sun warmed my face, and for a moment, I felt ordinary, like a mom treating her daughter to a birthday surprise, not a woman carrying a year's worth of grief, betrayal, and legal battles. Pause. Then my phone rang, a jarring buzz in my pocket. Lily's name flashed on the screen, and my stomach twisted, a mother's instinct screaming that something was wrong. Her voice when I answered was a sob, choked and trembling. "Mom, please come. These people, they're yelling at me. I don't know what to do." My heart pounded, a drumbeat of fear and fury as I ran, dodging shoppers, knocking over a crate of oranges in my haste. My eyes darted, searching for Lily's curls, her bright blue jacket. Emma's voice came through next, sharp with panic, her words tumbling over each other. "Mom, hurry. They've got her cornered near the candy stall." I sprinted, my breath ragged, the market's cheerful hum fading into a dull roar. I found them at the edge of the candy stall, a circle of 6 older women, gray hair, prim dresses, and venom in their gazes, surrounding Lily like a pack of wolves. My daughter stood frozen, clutching a crumpled bag of chocolates, tears streaming down her cheeks, her birthday joy stolen. Emma was pushing through, her fists clenched, her voice rising, but the women blocked her path, their bodies a wall of judgment. "You ungrateful girl," one woman hissed, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Turning your back on your grandparents, refusing your poor baby brothers. What kind of Christian are you?" Another stepped closer, pointing a trembling finger at Lily. "Those boys are orphaned, alone, and you won't even be a sister to them. You should be ashamed." Pause. Lily's eyes locked on mine, wide with fear and something deeper. Betrayal, the kind that comes from being attacked by adults you're supposed to trust. These weren't strangers. I recognized faces from Margaret and Henry's church. Eleanor, with her pinched lips. Martha, whose cross necklace gleamed accusingly. I'd seen them years ago, at Sunday services and potlucks, when I'd tried to fit into David's world, to be the wife his family expected. They were Margaret's soldiers, sent to wage her war, to punish my daughter for sins that weren't hers. I stepped between Lily and the women, my body a shield, my voice low but steady, each word carved from steel. "Back off. Now." Lily grabbed my arm, her sobs muffled against my jacket, her small frame shaking. I turned to Emma, who was trembling, her hazel eyes blazing with rage. "Take your sister's things, pay for them, and get to the car. Go." Emma hesitated, her jaw tight, her instinct to fight warring with her need to protect Lily. But she nodded, grabbing Lily's bag of chocolates and guiding her away, one arm around her shoulders. The women didn't move, their glares shifting to me, their judgment a heavy weight. Eleanor, the one with the cross necklace, stepped forward, her lips curled in disgust. "You're the worst of them, Sarah," she said, my name a curse on her tongue. "Disobeying your in-laws, defying God's will as a wife, you should be on your knees, begging for forgiveness." Pause. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that startled even me, echoing in the tense air. Forgiveness? For what? For surviving David's lies? For protecting my daughters from your poison? The argument erupted, voices clashing like thunder. I didn't hold back. I called them out for their cruelty, for targeting a 15-year-old on her birthday, for blindly swallowing Margaret's twisted version of the truth. "You don't know us," I shouted, my voice raw. "You don't know what we've been through, what your precious Margaret has done." They screamed back, accusing me of failing as a Christian, a wife, a mother. Eleanor's voice rose above the rest, shrill and sanctimonious. "You've abandoned God's path, Sarah. You've torn this family apart." The market manager, a burly man named Joe, pushed through the crowd, his face flushed with frustration. "Enough," he barked. "You're disturbing everyone. Take it outside or I'm calling the police." I didn't wait for their response. I turned, striding toward the parking lot, my pulse pounding in my ears. The women followed, their shouts trailing like vultures circling a kill. "Repent, Sarah." "Think of those boys." I ignored them, my focus on my daughters. I slid into the car, where Emma and Lily waited, their faces pale, their eyes haunted. We drove home in silence, the weight of the day pressing down like a storm cloud. Lily curled up in the back seat, her chocolates untouched, her birthday ruined. Emma stared out the window, her jaw tight, her fingers digging into her palms. I wanted to scream, to cry, to tear apart the world that kept hurting my girls. But I held it together, my hands steady on the wheel, my voice soft as I said, "We're okay. We're going to be okay." Pause. They didn't answer, but I felt their trust, fragile but unbroken, in the quiet. That night, after Emma and Lily went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table, a glass of wine untouched before me. The house was still, save for the faint creak of the floorboards settling, but my mind was a tempest. The anger was still there, burning low, but now it was cold, focused, a blade honed by years of betrayal. I needed answers. Why those women felt entitled to attack my daughter. What lies Margaret had fed them. I opened my laptop, my fingers trembling as I messaged Paul, a kind member of Margaret's church, who'd always treated me with fairness, even when others turned their backs. I poured out the story of the market, every humiliating detail, the women's words, Lily's tears, my own rage. His reply came within minutes, and it was worse than I'd feared. Pause. Paul apologized, his words heavy with regret. But what he shared next set my blood boiling. Margaret had posted a sprawling, tear-soaked story on the church's private Facebook group, a digital altar where she played the martyr. She and Henry were the victims, elderly, heartbroken, abandoned by their cruel daughter-in-law and granddaughters. She claimed we'd left them homeless, penniless, cast out into the cold, conveniently ignoring the hefty inheritance they'd received from David's bank account and life insurance, a sum that could have bought them a new life, if they'd chosen. She accused us of rejecting their grandsons, the boys born from David's affair, and tearing their family apart with our selfishness, and the most disgusting, stomach-churning lie. She claimed Rachel was our surrogate, that I'd refused the boys because they were male, as if I'd ever turn my back on a child for something so vile. It was a masterpiece of manipulation, a sob story, crafted to wring tears from even the hardest hearts. The church's more zealous members, those who clutched their Bibles and judged the world, lapped it up, flooding the post with prayers, heart emojis, and promises of support. "Oh, Margaret, we're praying for you," one wrote. "How could Sarah do this to you?" another demanded. "My daughters and I were the villains, the unchristian heathens who'd defied God's plan, who'd abandoned 2 innocent boys to a life without family. The boys," Paul explained, "were now with distant relatives of David's, a fact Margaret twisted to paint us as heartless." I sat back, my breath shallow, the screen's glow casting shadows on my face. Margaret's lies weren't just words. They were weapons, aimed at my daughters, at our peace, at the life we were trying to rebuild. But she'd made one fatal mistake. She'd underestimated me, and the church's one unforgivable sin. Margaret's church was a paradox, rigid, judgmental, especially on issues like divorce or identity, but with a strange saving grace, an ironclad stance against cheating. Infidelity was a scarlet letter, a sin that branded you for life no matter your status. Margaret had spun her lies carefully, cloaking David's affair in the fiction of a surrogate, but I had the truth, and the evidence to shatter her facade. The next morning, I woke with a fire in my chest, a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I gathered every scrap from the divorce proceedings, my hands steady despite the memories each piece revived. There were photos of David and Rachel, their faces unmistakable as they kissed in our living room. The same couch where I'd read bedtime stories to Emma and Lily. There were text messages between them, explicit, careless, a diary of their betrayal. There were conversations with Margaret and Henry, admitting they knew about the affair, offering David advice on keeping it hidden. "Don't let Sarah find out, son. She'll ruin everything." And then, the most damning, texts and emails to Emma and Lily, bullying them about their baby brothers, calling them selfish for not embracing the boys, accusing them of breaking their father's heart. One message, sent just 2 days after David's death, was a knife to my soul. Margaret had written, "You're nothing but bastards, both of you. Your father's gone because you told your mother about Rachel. His blood is on your hands." I read it again, my vision blurring with tears, not of sadness, but of rage. How dare she? How dare she blame my girls, who'd done nothing but love their father, for his choices, his recklessness, his death? I printed every piece, my printer humming late into the night, the pages stacking like a monument to the truth. I drove to a print shop at dawn, the air cold against my skin, and paid extra for high-quality paper, glossy, weighty, undeniable. Each image was sharp, each text crystal clear. Back home, I became an artist of vengeance. I spent hours crafting binders, each one a masterpiece disguised as destruction. I designed them to mimic the church's hymnals, embossed covers, neat tabs, the kind of book you'd pick up without a second thought. The first page of each was the photo of David and Rachel, locked in an embrace, their faces unmistakable. Rachel's dark hair and pale skin were a stark contrast to my own auburn hair and freckles. No one could mistake her for me, no matter what Margaret claimed. Beneath the image, I wrote in bold, deliberate letters, "David and Rachel's love story." Inside, I organized the evidence like chapters in a tragedy. David's texts, Margaret's complicity, the cruelty to my daughters, each page a nail in their coffin. I drove to the church before Sunday service, the binders stacked in my passenger seat, their weight a strange comfort. The parking lot was quiet, the morning mist curling around the steeple, the air heavy with anticipation. I slipped into the back of the sanctuary, my footsteps soft on the carpet. A table held extra hymnals for forgetful parishioners, unguarded, unchecked. I placed my binders among them, their covers blending seamlessly, a wolf in sheep's clothing. My heart pounded, a mix of dread and exhilaration, as I turned and left, the door closing softly behind me. Pause. The gossip spread like wildfire, a spark igniting a dry forest. By noon, the church's Facebook group was a battlefield, posts exploding with shock, outrage, and betrayal. Members shared screenshots of the binders, the images and texts too clear to deny. David was branded a liar, a sinner, his name dragged through the mud. Rachel was called names I won't repeat, her memory torn apart. But the real venom was reserved for Margaret and Henry. The messages to my daughters, calling them bastards, blaming them for David's death, shocked even the most devout. One woman, a longtime member, posted, How dare they treat those girls like that? After all they've lost. This is not the work of God. The pastor, a stern man named Reverend Thompson, stepped in, his post pleading for civility, for Christian compassion. But the damage was done. The congregation turned on Margaret and Henry with a fury reserved for sinners caught red-handed. The binders revealed their complicity, their cruelty, their lies about the surrogate. Another member, a grandmotherly type who'd once baked me a casserole, wrote, "Margaret lied to us all. She used our faith to hide her son's shame. Shame on her." I wasn't spared entirely. Some still criticized me for pursuing the divorce, calling it a failure of my wifely duties, a sin against God's design. But even they conceded my reaction was understandable, that the shock of David's betrayal might have driven me to stray. They wrote, "Sarah may return to the light one day, unlike her cheating husband and his Jezebel." The hypocrisy made me laugh, a bitter sound in the quiet of my kitchen. I didn't care about their judgment. My girls were vindicated, their pain acknowledged, their truth laid bare. Pause. A few days later, 2 apology letters arrived in the mail, one addressed to Emma, one to Lily, written in careful, looping script. The church invited us to join them for support, a gesture that felt more like pity than remorse. I tucked the letters into a drawer, unsure if I'd ever show my daughters. They were still healing, working through their trauma with a therapist, unraveling the knots of their father's betrayal, their grandparents' cruelty. They didn't need a congregation's platitudes. They needed time, love, and a mother who'd fight for them, no matter the cost.